I had to learn how to survive in a world that tried to split me. They were saying to me that I was broken.
Religion doesn't want me to be included, so why would I want to be included?
I've been a Christian for over 30 years and I also happen to be gay.
Being gay and Christian in Northern Ireland, I think, is enormously challenging.
A Question of Belonging, LGBT Stories of Faith, is a filmmaking project supporting the inclusion of LGBT people in places of faith. Our larger aim is to create an educational resource to give a voice and ideally a face to LGBT people of faith and their experiences of being included or excluded from faith communities.
For me, it's probably the main driver of my life, and I can't imagine not being a person of faith and one who tries to follow Christ each day to the best of my ability.
So I suppose faith now, it's something I'm trying to re-engage with after a long time of feeling that it wasn't for me, that it didn't welcome me, that because I came out as gay and the church said that was wrong. I disengaged, so very, very consciously disengaged, probably for about 20 years.
I think my relationship with faith has changed over the years. People talk about having a scripturally sound basis for their faith, but what does that really mean?
I grew up in a Catholic family, and faith was absolutely part of every day.
There still is quite a significant division, and the majority of churches would hold a very traditional view, and those people who are part of the LGBT community would often consider Christians to be in opposition to them, and if anything, being seen very judgmental.
I was hearing stuff at Mass and at the prayer group that my parents were at regarding homosexuality, and I realised that thing they're talking about, that's me. And I realised very quickly I was going to have to find all kinds of mechanisms to not tell the truth.
Every time I turned on the radio and somebody came on the radio on a radio show and said, as a Christian, inevitably, they would say something I disagreed with, because it would be homophobic or transphobic or sectarian or bigoted or misogynistic.
I still think churches are overall unwelcoming, and churches that say we do welcome LGBT people, you find that there's a lot of caveats with it.
So people would say that you can't be gay and Christian or gay and Catholic, but it always seemed to me that they had a really diminutive understanding about what it meant to be gay.
For me, it was seeing the harm that we seem to be doing to people, where people seem to feel an awful lot of guilt about who they were, that people were denying any sense of feelings, had to live quite isolated lives, often were self-harming, there was a significant amount of suicide ideation. And I think for me that just began to challenge me. Is this right, the way we're asking people to live these lives that are not natural for them, or for me?
So I did have to choose, but not because I needed to, but because I had to do that because other people required it.
I've been on an interesting journey in relation to LGBT issues within the church and within my faith. I've been very challenged by having a lot of gay friends who have felt that they needed to choose between being gay or being Christian, and that's been absolutely heartbreaking.
The theological journey for me has been about looking at the Bible differently in relation to a whole host of issues, and recognising that cherry-picking particular verses and using those to oppress or limit is not good theology.
He also then spoke about Jesus of Nazareth in a way that made me think, I had never thought that I could be included in a story of inclusion. I had thought that I was one of the ones that would be cast away into the fire. That's what I was told.
I really came to a point of recognising that actually to be gay was okay before God, and to be gay and in a partnership was okay before God.
What I have seen in other people's articulation of their faith in the public sphere is that their position is so fixed and so definitive. And for them to be right, I must be wrong. churches really need to look at themselves in terms of the hierarchy of sin and why they have decided that my life, and it's not my lifestyle, it's my life, is in some way sinful. Certainly from my point of view, if being gay was the only sin I've ever committed, then I should be fast-tracked for sainthood.
I hear that phrase over and over, a person struggling with homosexuality. And these days I correct that when people say that. I don't struggle with homosexuality. I struggle with other people's struggle with homosexuality. I was put through exorcisms, 3 of them, and then 2 years of reparative therapy. These were such invasive things, and they were saying to me that I was broken. I tell you, I was broken by those things.
There have been my hopes for inclusion that for everyone's sake, but particularly for the LGBT community, that we all get beyond the point where they have to make an argument for who they are.
I would really hope in the years to come that churches would be more than purely what is referred to as welcoming, but actually begin to affirm and to celebrate LGBT people within the congregations.
For this project, I would love it to create a space where people could have those conversations, where people could explore things that maybe they would have been fearful of previously, and they could consider moving from where they were to a different place that might be actually much more fruitful for them, as well as more helpful for people who are LGBT.
What I'd like to see for this resource is that it's an opportunity to present people's stories, to put people's stories in front of others, so that they are encountering the stories of human beings who are, like all of us, struggling to make sense of faith in the context of our world. And these people just happen to be gay.
I would love this resource to be a way in which people who don't know any openly gay Christians would see the face and hear the voice and the reality of the lived experience of people who are both Christian, who stumble every day to follow Christ like everybody else does, and yet at the same time identify as gay people.
I think the important thing about a resource like this is that a lot of people who have opinions on LGBT people have opinions based on stereotypes and imaginary people. So I think a resource like this will allow those voices, particularly directly in a faith context as opposed to a rights context, to be heard.
I would like this resource to include stories, real stories from people who are LGBTQ living in Northern Ireland, people of faith, and the reality of what it feels like when people with good intentions are shutting you out.
I'm really happy that we are part of a resource creating this, to be here in the Cree, a place of prayer and encounter at Corrymeela, talking about how it is that stories can do that. People talking about how their hearts were converted toward a more flourishing, inclusive way of loving their faith and loving their neighbour as well, their gay neighbour as well.